Well, hello everybody. We are now live on air for our first joint, apart from the testing, live stream on Steve and my weekly chat. We've been chatting for how many months now, Steve?
I've been chatting for quite a while. We've had a private chat, just you and I, once a week for probably close to a year now.
Mm, exactly. So we decided to kind of
Let
extend,
everybody in on it.
extend the audience and see who else wants to kind of get in on what we're talking about and what we're engaging on, and really generally anything about Power Apps, Power Platform, anything Dynamics, really anything under Microsoft Business Apps is kind of no sacred ground that we won't cover. Is that right?
So far, there hasn't been, but that's just been you and me talking. Now that we're letting the rest of the world in on our conversation,
Yeah,
I think we'll probably just continue the same conversation we usually have.
that's right.
But now we'll have some people maybe asking some questions.
Yeah. So, yeah, feel free to ask questions in the chat. We might put up some type of tooling later on that allow for more questions to be received pre-show, stuff you want us to investigate, get on air, get answered, that type of thing. Of course, we'll call you out, and as when we say, we'll call you out politely. We'll call you out and acknowledge you for submitting the question, unless you would prefer that not to be the case. So,
I will also call you out if you ask a stupid question.
so Steve, tell me, what were your retrospective thoughts of last week Bizet Summit?
I enjoyed Summit this time. I enjoyed it last time too. We had the added burden this year of trying to pull together this live stream from the event, our first time even trying to put it together, sorting equipment, sorting signals. And I know our first day, a lot of folks were complaining about some choppiness because of the Wi-Fi we were trying to connect to, which worked fine first thing in the morning until anybody else walked in the exhibit hall,
Yeah.
and then it kind of turned to crap on us. But second day with the hardwire, was much better.
Mm-hmm.
But it did kind of dominate, I think, for both of us. Our attendance there was kind of focusing on that. So I didn't get to see a lot of sessions that I would have liked to have seen, but we got to speak to a lot of the speakers of those
Yeah.
sessions. We had some private sessions, and those are out there now on your channel. People can go look at the. I think you even created a playlist
Exactly.
for MS. So
Yeah, it was great. It was definitely a learning curve for us. This whole area of kind of trying to give people another way to engage in an event. I've actually written a blog post that I'm going to put live on Sunday. I've already had requests like, "Wow, what was your rig? How did it all come together?" So I've written a post up, and as I said, it's scheduled to go live Sunday. Hopefully, that will give people insight into everything from the technology to why we did it, and a feel for what we were doing.
yeah, I think that it was certainly a good test. I think this is another interesting thing is to see if I think both of us have got pretty reasonable size audiences, delayed time.
Mm-hmm.
When they're reading a blog or they're listening to a podcast on their own time. I'd be curious to see how many people will tune in live. Whether this is a good time for people. We picked this time because it actually works out to be about 8 a.m. on the west coast of the U.S. all the way over to about 4 p.m. in the UK.
Yep.
So it covers the biggest part of our audience during the working day. Maybe the working day is going to turn out to be the problem, that we're catching everybody while they're at work.
Yeah.
But just flip us up on another monitor when your boss isn't looking. Wear some headphones and
Exactly.
switch screens real quick when he walks by.
Yeah, feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and if we know the answers, we'll get to them. Notice there that we've created a hashtag called Power Up Live, and we're going to basically monitor that hashtag on various social media channels. We're not fully set up for it just yet, but we'll monitor and use that as another way of kind of questions associated with the show. Steve just came up with that name about 15 minutes ago. So
In case you don't like it.
yeah, we quickly, not in case you don't like it, but kind of like, where does it come from? More to the point now. Interesting, Steve. I was just on another call with the training side of Microsoft, and they had some key insights of the of Summit, like some key data points, and I'll just cover a couple of them here. So they had over 8,000 evaluations from the sessions, and that was a total of 330 sessions in 2 days. That's a phenomenal number of sessions. Have you died? Have you not heard my audio on that one, Steve?
Yeah, your audio dropped out a little bit there.
Okay, bizarre. Anyhow, so yeah, 1,917 pre-day attendees joined across 16 sessions on the Sunday. So,
Wow.
you saw me. I was involved in one of those sessions, Hack for Good. Phenomenal event, massive turnout. So it was exciting to kind of see that engagement from the community wanting to build apps in a day for the non-for-profit sector.
Yeah, that was my first time going to one of those hackathons,
Mm-hmm.
and it was definitely interesting. It was fun. It was exciting. There were points, where it's not a spectator sport
Yeah.
because it all has this excitement to get started, and then everybody's heads down, and it gets kind of boring as a spectator for the heads down part. But then it pops back up again. But certainly, if you're on a team, I could see how that would be very very exciting. It looked like everybody was having fun, and there was some pretty good stuff produced there.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about how if you tried to do a hackathon like that, 3 years ago with, okay, build something for charity in a day on dynamic CRM online,
Yeah.
you wouldn't be able to come up with much. But, with the Power Platform now, there's just some pretty amazing stuff that they're able to put together so quickly.
Well, this is a thing, so many of the apps that were built, even though they might not have been 100% finished, for example, Team Blue, which was my team, two French people actually on the team from France that had joined, they actually went and completed in the following days the actual app for that charity. And so enabled it so that they can turn it on and go live with that, or enable that charity to save literally hundreds and hundreds of hours by taking a manual based process using, in their case, Word and PowerPoint to make it a much more automated a tool that can really create transformation for their organization.
That's beyond just a charity story. I mean, that's kind of the way we're looking at Power Apps now. And they've referred to like Canvas apps being the replacement for pen and
Mm-hmm.
paper, and then I kind of extended that to the model driven as a replacement for spreadsheets processes. And just like what you guys saw with that charity scenario that you were given, it's a spreadsheet PowerPoint based
Mm-hmm.
process that, what was she talking about? Something like 75 PowerPoints or something that they're generating weekly or something like that to do all their reporting.
Yeah.
And just it makes you wonder. Well, it doesn't make you wonder. It just makes you aware of how many people out there, companies of all sizes, not just charities, which are large, but these people had a $150 million budget. They weren't like, a little charity. It's a big charity.
Mm-hmm.
And companies of all sizes out there that are just struggling with uh, productivity apps like PowerPoint or Excel or Word to try and do business processes with them. I don't know that a lot of them are even aware, and I think that's part of the job of all of us partners, you and I, and anybody that's listening or will be listening, is having those people kind of understand the opportunity that's before them now, really to fairly simply and fairly quickly just revolutionize. We've had a few of these lately where we've taken a spreadsheet based process and moved it to a Power App, and I mean, the people are just
Yeah.
amazed. They just had no idea how much easier their life could be, and just freed up all that time now for them to be so much more productive in their roles. I think that's going to be a big push this year, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I see CRM Answers just gave us a shout out on air, gave us a wave. Thanks, CRM Answers.
Thank you.
What was that?
I was thanking them as
Yeah,
well.
very nice, very nice. You can claim that you're the first person to engage in one of these new live sessions that we're doing. Anyhow, so another interesting stat I saw, and I know you attended James Phillips's keynote. 3,600 attendees were packed into that room for that keynote address, let alone the live stream from that. What was your key takeaways from it?
I think that clearly the focus with them for a little while has been on data.
Yeah.
Data. It's all about the data, and they continue to. I mean, I think if I'm Microsoft, I'm doing the same thing, right? I'm going to take what are my unique value proposition that no one else has, or there's other people that have pieces, but no one else has the combination, and what can I create with that combination that is unique? And they're definitely determined that AI is a strong area for them. That they've covered a lot, across that AI, where other people are only covering like segments.
Yeah.
So really stepping on the gas on that competitive advantage that's uniquely theirs, which is smart. They did the mixed reality demo. And unfortunately, as demos go, the thing kind of crapped out on them on stage.
Yeah.
But fortunately, this time, unlike at Summit, this time they had a recording of the rehearsal, so they're to let everybody see what that was all about.
Yeah.
It was also this time we saw a new version of the digital transformation loop.
Into that funnel.
The propeller now is
Yep.
kind of laying on its side, and there's a funnel sticking out of it, which a new little graphic there someone has come up with. It was interesting at the very top of that funnel. It really was ISV.
Wow.
They built that funnel up from the bottom of the different applications capabilities, and then really had at the top of that funnel ISV. So there's a renewed focus from Microsoft on ISVs. And you and I have talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
We are an ISV. Both of us consult with
Yeah.
ISVs. And so that's been near and dear to our heart. And there's some pretty big changes that they've been making over there.
What I don't know if you got to attend, but yesterday there was the first of a new ISV series that has kicked off that Microsoft are doing every week, every Tuesday. They're going live, and really bringing ISVs, educating ISVs. I think they're lined up for at least the next 2 months, every single week, and of course next month is really the big transition starts, which is meant to be,
Yeah.
based on the information I saw yesterday, should be really bedded down and finished by the end of October. So basically that's going to mean recertification of apps, and you're going to have a couple of months, maybe 3 max, to either be 9.0 compliant minimum, or see you later, you're out of the App Store.
Yeah, I think that's probably got a lot of people excited and a lot of people scared. I think that if you're like us and you stayed up to date on the application, you kind of look forward to having all that chaff kind of removed from the marketplace. But I guess if you're some of that chaff in the marketplace, you probably, not too happy. You're either going to have to go invest or just let your app die. And I think we're going to see a lot of those apps just fall out, because I think people created some apps, threw them up there, thinking it was going to be an easy way to make a quick buck or get some leads. Didn't really pan out like they hoped. They haven't stayed up to date with what the plans are to make that app source work. So I think they're just going to say, I'm not going to invest in that. It didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And it'll be kind of ironic that all these people that jumped on early are going to be jumping off the train just as it actually starts moving.
Yeah. Yeah. But
We'll see. I mean, I've probably lost credibility with anybody listening or anybody reading about ISV, because I've had high hopes for App Source for a long time, and they continue to let me down. I'm hoping they don't again.
listen, I think that Microsoft's going in the right direction. Somebody shot out about the blog post I put up a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn. So I did a blog on, as an ISV, why should you choose the Power Platform? And
Yep, great blog.
a bunch of people had jumped on that. One guy, listed a whole bunch of people that are on Salesforce, built billion-dollar businesses as ISVs on that platform. But the thing is that I don't think Microsoft is if you like, letting the opportunity go by for ISVs in our story. And I think this change had to happen. There had to be this kind of total rebuild, if you like, of the systems. And what they showed yesterday on the call was the new software that's going to run behind the scenes. One of the complaints that people had, well, if I've got to recertify my software every time there's kind of, a patch or a bug fix, well, they addressed that. They showed that, there'll be an upfront certification, which is to validate, you're a legit company. You're somebody can be trusted. Your software is sound. It's not going to do anything dodgy on their platform. But then, after that point, like revalidation, that type of thing is going to really be an automated bunch of scripts that will
Yeah.
mean you're in compliant. If not, this is what you need to fix and deploy. I don't think we're going to see these long lead times. Some people have been concerned 2-3 weeks before an app gets turned around. They're tooling up to solve a lot of that and remove the human error side of it. So I think it's positive.
Yeah, I think also, up until now, there was a part of that certification process that involved, uh, some outsourced consulting team wanting to get on the phone with you to ask you, like, what does your app do? Why would people want it, and things like that, which it always kind of bothered me because I'm like, who are you to tell me who my market is or
Yeah.
what my value prop is? Does it work technically? Does it meet the criteria? Then get off my goddamn phone.
Mm-mm.
They used to annoy the crap out of me, and I would just ignore them and just go around them to get the things. So, but I think as part of this automated process, obviously that's going to go away, and it should, because it's my responsibility as an ISV to build an application that is technically sound, that isn't going to do any dodgy stuff in the environment. Whether anybody buys my value proposition, that's kind of my business, and that'll be determined over time by downloads or rankings or
Yeah.
ratings. And if I get low ratings, then so be it. But I never liked that part of that certification process was some kid over
Yeah.
on the other side of the world asking me why someone would want my app who doesn't know anything.
Exactly. Exactly. So what do you see as on your horizon in the next couple of months coming up? What do you see happening that's on your radar, if you like?
I think this is probably the hottest thing for us. Not as big a concern, I'm sure, for some of the SIs out there and some of the other folks that aren't really in that ISV space. I think the ISV space is the one undergoing the most change in the shortest amount of time right now. So they're the ones that need to be paying attention. They should probably be on these calls you mentioned. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you could put a link to that, maybe if there's any show notes for these things or anything. But to get them to those, I was frustrated that I missed the first one yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm signed up for the remaining, I don't know, 20 calls or something that they've got to make sure that we all know what we're doing. So I'd say as an ISV, if you're not getting on those calls, you're probably going to get, blindsided with some stuff you weren't ready for. I really enjoyed your podcast. I listened to it yesterday, the one you did with the gal from Inside
Ah,
View.
yeah. Heidi.
Um, and she had some pretty good insight,
Yeah.
and it was interesting to see how, you know, even a larger ISV who you would think would be a little more independent
Mm-mm.
and really probably more of what you'd call a connect
Mm-hmm.
ISV was really right up to speed on what's happening
Yeah.
and where. She didn't. You asked her several questions, and I know you already knew the answers to them, and she knew them as
Yeah.
well. So I was impressed that it looks like the big ISVs, the legitimate ISVs, are paying attention
Yeah.
out there, and they need to be. This is you and I have talked before about this whole revenue share and how it kind of needed to happen, and it needed to happen because Microsoft needed to give a shit
Mm-mm.
about ISVs. And the only way they were ever going to give a shit was if there was some revenue component to it.
Yeah.
Because other than that, it was charity. It was a charity effort on their part. It was kind of how they looked at
Yeah.
it. Even if it doesn't, even if it's not a revenue generator, if it's at least revenue neutral, that they reinvest that tax, as you've called it, back into the programs, back into the
Yeah.
ISVs. That's gonna. I mean, that was, I think, the biggest thing that needed to happen, because as a no cost program,
Mm-mm.
where was the investment? I mean, it was a cost for Microsoft to support
Yeah.
ISVs.
So true. So true. Do you know what? The other thing I find interesting, coming off Bizet Summit, talking with a bunch of ISVs again, there's still this disconnect between the old Dynamics 365 application dependency for their solution and what is now provided on the Power Platform with the P2 SKU. And there still seems to be a lot of people locked into that I need Dynamics as an ISV to build my solution. And really, that's just not the case anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're at that point where where people are hearing terms like PowerApps. I mean, one of the things I think that kind of hurt things was PowerApps started out as a Canvas app coming out of really the office side of the
Mm-hmm.
house. It's mostly SharePoint related. Um, and when they released the model-driven Power App, I don't know that a lot of people grasped the distinction between Canvas and model. And when they heard that, they thought, "Oh, you already know what Power Apps are. That's that Canvas thing."
Yeah.
So they haven't really looked closely enough to understand that Canvas Power Apps and model-driven Power Apps at the moment are two completely different
Yeah.
things. And model-driven Power Apps are basically Dynamics 365 without Dynamics 365. And that light bulb is starting to go off, but not as quickly as it could have. And there are definitely ISVs out there that have taken a lot of dependencies on first-party entities, relationships, but there are a lot of them that have taken very little, very few
Yeah.
dependencies. I was talking to one I think you and I were both talking to one not long ago that basically everything they used was custom.
Mm.
I don't think they took any dependencies on anything that wasn't in CDS and available to the P2 platform
Yeah.
license. Hadn't taken a one, yet we're still out there selling this thing as requiring this $95
Yeah.
license. In their case, they didn't even have to do any work. You
Exactly.
know,
So what happens in this scenario? Let's say an ISV wants to build an app that basically the data they collect in the app or use or whatever the line of business application they create might be industry specific, but they don't want to kind of exclude the possibility that their end customer might want to use Dynamics Sales or Dynamics Field Service or Dynamics 365 for customer service. And so they want to make sure that if a customer at some point implements one of those first party apps, that they're not going to break anything, right? So they've built their standalone app, it's all custom entities. But let's say they had a process that in the end feeds or could put data into an opportunity entity, but they're not using sales, Dynamics 365 for sales. But they want the ability that if they had left data in, if you like, ultimately CDS in the a common data model for sales, that it could be consumed. And one of the difficulties right now is you can't get the common data models into your instance without using a Dynamics 365 license. Tell me, Steve, do you think this would work? What about if you put in one Dynamics 365 for sales license, so you paid for one license, you built your app, but you've now got the schema, if you like, in place in CDS for that, which means the opportunity entity would be there. There'd be no UI for it for anybody unless they had that particular license and they would not need to access it. Could you then build out your solution knowing that if anything you injected in or mapped through to the opportunity entity would be available should that company turn around and buy 50 Dynamics 365 for sales licenses? Do you reckon that would work as a workaround right now for the fact that Microsoft hasn't yet released the common data models without the UI into CDS?
so that would work. The caveat there is that, of course, if you buy one license of Dynamics 365 sales, the sales schema gets installed on that CDS.
Mm-hmm.
That license includes P2
Mm-hmm.
capabilities, but you could also then go license a bunch of users with P2
Yep.
only in that
Yep.
CDS. This is where that concept of restricted entities comes in, because I think there have been some confusion for people about what that meant. But basically, what that means is if you have a P2 user who's interacting with a restricted entity,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. They can do that, but they're going to need to pay for a sales license.
Right. So
So
let's say none of the P2 people are going to touch the opportunity entity at all. They're never going to access the UI into that application. However, let's say a flow or in the past, if you did a mapping, you could map data from one entity through to another. Let's say that's running behind the scenes. A workflow might be updating or putting data into the opportunity entity, but nobody is going to touch the user interface on those P2 licenses. Do you see that that is a okay, acceptable workaround until, because my understanding is that Microsoft, I've heard the comment. Oh, sorry, my computer's just started playing my music on Spotify, so I'll just shut that down a second.
I thought you were giving us some ambiance.
Wasn't intentional. Heck, I don't want to get blocked because I'm streaming some uncopyrighted or copyrighted music. So yeah. So I understand before the end of the year, they're meant to be, I don't know, somehow potentially providing the common data models for all the first party apps, but just, no UI, nothing like that available. But that's potentially something they're working towards.
Matt Barber had promised that to us for a while. He said that was coming. He kept saying that was coming, that was coming. And I think there was this realization that the data model itself is not particularly valuable.
Yeah,
It's their logic that they have built on top of that data model that makes the first party apps valuable. It's
exactly.
not the fact that they have a table in a database called opportunity that has some attributes to it. I think there's probably still some politics going on and dragging the feet for that to happen.
Yep.
But potentially, if that were the case, and the restricted entity thing comes into play when you've got that mixed environment where you've got enterprise users that are using a restricted entity as they're able to. Then, as a P2 user with a half price license, you shouldn't be able to do the same thing with their restricted entity. That's kind of what they're trying to protect.
Yeah.
What what you are able to do on CDS, as you know, of course, is you can create your own opportunity entity.
Yep.
Uh, that's what we did with the rapid start, actually, all the way from the jump when everybody kept telling us, "Oh, not allowed to do that, not allowed to do that." But it wasn't that they weren't allowed to do that. I think people just didn't understand the rules, and
Yeah.
I happen to understand them. But the challenge there, as you pointed out, is if I've got a customer stood up on a P2 platform
Yeah.
CDS with a custom entity that I built that is either similar or serves a similar purpose to an out of the box entity, and then they want to upgrade. Well, one of the things that I had been mistaken on was that they could just upgrade that CDS entity just by adding new licenses. Could just go buy a Dynamics 365 Sales.
Oh, I'm not sure what's happened to Steve there. He seems to have frozen on his. Oh, there we go. We lost his Skype connection. Oh, your Skype connection's back, Steve. We just lost you just at the end there. Can you finish that off?
Sure, where did I stop?
So you're talking about that P2 dependency, and that if you created an app that you created your own opportunity entity, there's the issue that, of course, it's not forward gradable into a first
Yeah,
party app.
and I had been under the mistaken impression that someone could just buy a first party license and it would add uh, add the data schema to that existing CDS
Yep.
and they could just go forward. And right now, that will require a migration,
Mm.
uh, although that is coming at some point in the future. But when that does come, imagine the scenario where I've created a custom opportunity entity. And then later the customer decides, we've got some power users that want to make access of things like
Yep.
playbooks or resource scheduling or something that is going to remain on the other side of the house. And they do that upgrade, and now they could potentially have two opportunity entities in there that aren't connected to one another. So now you've got yourself as an ISV in a situation of potentially having to provide a migration to migrate those over.
Yeah.
It's it'll be interesting to see how that one shakes out. I can tell you in our experience so far, what we have seen is customers that start with a Power App, build the custom entities to meet their needs. Um, I've yet to have any of them say, we'd like to go from this thing that has been custom built exactly to fit our needs. We'd like to go from here to the first party out of the box app and start over.
Yeah.
Haven't seen that yet. I think that the question will be, and where Microsoft, I think, is going to move is less around this idea of restricted entities and the schema. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be more like, oh, you want playbooks? Playbooks come with a first party app. Do
Exactly.
you want some of this AI stuff? That's going to be part of the first party app. And it'll be a little tug of war between us platform based guys and the first party
Mm-hmm.
guys. We got an Outlook app finally for CDS.
Yep.
We just heard, of course, at Application Summit about a portal capability
Mm-hmm.
for CDS. And you got to know the first party app guys are cringing every time they see something released for CDS for basically people to build on platform. And Hayden had said in the podcast I did with him a few weeks
Mm-hmm.
ago, which was actually quite interesting. If you haven't listened to Hayden's, he's a top sales dog for Microsoft, and he had said that they were legitimately concerned about potential cannibalization when they launched that platform
Yeah.
license. Still are. Um, at some levels. He also had said that he thought that before the end of this year, that probably isn't going to come to pass,
Mm-hmm.
that some ISV is going to build an enterprise level, sales app to compete with Microsoft's enterprise sales app. That's certainly not what
Yeah.
we've attempted to do. We've kind of done something a little differently, but that he thinks someone, at some point will go to the effort to build out a full competitive
Mm-hmm.
enterprise level app. Well, not if they, keep enough stuff away from them, which is kind of what they're doing, playing a little keep away right now
Yeah.
with some of these new features and capabilities.
Yeah. So this is the interesting thing, right? Is that since this transition has happened, we've started to see a much greater emphasis in the sales app that I've not seen for eons, right? As in, we're starting to see new functionality, whether it be playbooks, whether it be the AI capabilities. So I think Microsoft, the people that own that particular product, that app, sales, Dynamics 365 for sales, are realizing that they really have to bring a whole new level of functionality applicable to where the market has moved on to. They can no longer sit in what's been in the app for the last 10 years and really have to produce some quality value because, like you say, somebody could come along, build a better first party app, and theoretically, the fact that they kind of, what I say, look behind the curtain, they have full access that we in the public don't have to the engineering of the Power Platform. They should always be ahead of the market. And if somebody can come along and build a better app, like Hayden was saying, that's almost shame on those PMs for not being ahead of the game and not moving quick enough and really sitting on the developments of yesteryear but not evolving to where the market's moving.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd say that the opening of the platform app has put some pressure on the first party teams
Yeah.
that's going to press them to have to advance the ball farther because ISVs, I don't think that it wouldn't be easy for a ISV today to build a better enterprise sales app. They could build a competitive enterprise sales app,
Yeah.
maybe, angle it off slightly towards a vertical and get some competitive advantage.
Yep.
But everything that comes in the enterprise application, I mean, there's a lot of stuff, as you know, in those enterprise applications. And much of it, doesn't get used broadly. Some of it's used by certain people,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of that Swiss Army knife that everybody uses about 10 of the
Yep.
15 blades, but they all use different ones. But but I think that it definitely it doesn't hurt to have your PMs have somebody kind of chomping at their heels, keeping them looking forward. That can't be anything but good for Microsoft.
I totally agree. I totally agree. The just trying a little feature there in the app to seeing by if I can create a trigger. Oh, look at that! I was able to create a trigger event. I had a little bot that did a little.
Oh, nice.
Look at that! It works. It's we're just trying some new technology out as well. This is all learning for us. But as I said in the blog post that comes out on a Sunday, you always and you're never an expert on day one, right? But
Yeah.
let's see where we are when we've done 100 of these live shows. Perhaps get some other guests on air or that type of thing. But just the reason we're doing this is to share our knowledge. So if you can't find value in it, you want us to focus on something specific for a show, our intention is to be live every single Wednesday, right? At this time, we'll do a 1 hour session. So yeah, we're open to what you're interested in, what you'd like us to discuss. Let us know, and I tell you what, we'll get more fancy with our transitions on screen and and playing with the toys. I tell you, after the Bizet Summit, I came away with a new shopping list of kit for. I
Yeah.
think the next big event I was asked to. Well, we were asked, right, to go to Australia and do this at the event in Australia. I
Yeah.
hope none of them are listening because I haven't told them that I'm declining that offer, and
Right.
that's because well, I already have a speaking engagement in Norway for a 365 event the same week there, and
Yeah.
I'm listed on that with Marius up there. So, and then the other thing, it's a long way to fly, right? Just for a couple of days event, and this is the kickoff. And I mean, it's going to be epic. That I believe Australia will get to a similar size to what we're seeing in at least Europe, if not as well as in the US. But Orlando's that next big event for us, right? I've just had some
Yeah.
sessions accepted, so I'm looking forward to presenting at the Orlando event. And what are your thoughts on live streaming at that event, getting interviews in with key people once again?
Yeah, I think that we've done this once now, so clearly we can demand that we'll only do it for big events.
Mm-hmm.
That was I'm going to start work on my rider already of the things I expect the venue to have for us. No, I think Orlando, obviously very convenient for me because I'm in Tampa. It's about an hour away.
Mm-hmm.
But Orlando is going to be an interesting event because we did this first at a Microsoft event.
Yep.
Um, and we kind of saw how that went. We learned some lessons there about Wi-Fi and hardwiring and setup and I think one of the lessons we learned there was focusing a little more on lining people up in advance. We
Absolutely.
did a lot of we talked to a lot of folks there, but we also missed a lot of folks there because we didn't really coordinate real well with them. So we're going to do a better job in Orlando
Yep.
of lining people up specifically to come. We know that we're going to have a hardwire one way or another
Yeah.
because that almost ruined our first day. If
Well,
it
it
didn't,
did, right? I mean,
yeah.
yes, if you're on the live stream, you got to see it, even though it was a bit choppy. But we noticed that the minute the attendees came into the expo floor,
Oh, it
you
just
know,
plummeted.
it basically, we lost it. So, I mean, we had over double the amount of footage that's currently live, from in the playback series there, that it's not, I won't put it
It
on
is
air
visible.
because it's of not a good enough quality. So sorry to those people that we did have on air. It did live stream at the time, but we know now that we must have a
Lesson
wired
learned.
connection.
Yeah, lesson learned.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think for just like how Business Applications' second event was better than their first, hastily prepared. I think our second live stream from an event will be significantly better than our first
yeah,
because we'll be prepared and we know exactly what not to do this time. We might learn some new things not to do, but at least we learned some obvious ones. So it'll definitely get better. As will this. I mean, it's the first time we're doing this, and we're figuring out the best way to kind of make this thing effective and valuable.
yeah.
And then it's just getting the word out. I'm actually glad we don't have a ton of people online now
Mm-hmm.
because we're still working through the stuff. But it'll get out there. We'll build an audience around this, just like we did around our other followings and stuff like that.
Yeah, what I find interesting is that the stats here that are showing to me, it says, we've got a bunch of concurrent people viewing, which is quite different. That I got a separate tablet here, and I can see that on the tablet it's only showing two people watching. I don't know if it doesn't update because there's definitely more currently watching now in the stats panel that YouTube provides to me. But interesting, there's been over 10 playbacks already. So people are going, and if you like, there's a DVR type feature that they can go back and start watching. So yeah, I mean, total time as of right now, over 2 hours have been watched of us,
We
which
haven't
is,
even talked that
we haven't
long.
even been talking that long. But, what are we on? Coming up, I'd got another 20 minutes. And one of the things I did want to, one of the questions I've been getting hammered on was around the EDX learning from Microsoft and the mapping of that learning to exams. And of course, they don't map. Unfortunately, this year there was a lot of transitioning happening, and the actual content, is very accurate and brilliant. However, the content wasn't
Can't
necessarily
find it.
written in line. What did you say?
You just can't find it, right?
Well, that's difficult. That's definitely difficult findability of it, and I don't know why that is. Why Microsoft hasn't made it searchable. But then the other thing is that it doesn't necessarily map directly to the exams,
Yeah.
right? So there's a misalignment. Now, next year, I think this will be a non-issue. But what we've gone through is this massive transition to be Dynamics 365 being the center of the universe from a CE perspective. And now we're seeing kind of anybody that's in a maker type role, anyone that's kind of a functional or a consultant, really, the training is if you're up to speed on the Power Platform and CDS and those experiences, the dynamics piece, like if it's sales, for example, is only dealing with the sales automation
Yeah.
scenario. The core
Yeah.
content is back always on the Power Platform, and we're going to see more of that going forward. And of course, I'd say the exams by next year will be on par. We've just got a bit of misalignment this year, and if I was personally prepping for the exam, I'd probably focus more on Microsoft Docs at the moment as a point of learning. When you see the outlines of what's been covered, search those areas on Docs, get up to speed on what Docs is saying, and you're probably more set up or aligned if you're prepping for the exam right now.
What do you think about Learn? We talked to Case
Mm-hmm.
at that thing about Learn, and he said a lot of effort's going there.
A massive amount, right? And like this is the first time in my Dynamics career, and I've been doing this for 16 years, that Microsoft has actually provided, like they used to provide this training to partners. Even partners, used to be charged for it back
Yeah.
in the day. You had to get a training pack. Now, DLP is dead. It's not. Sorry, I shouldn't use that. I'm getting in trouble
Right.
for throwing the word dead out too often. But DLP is no longer the kind of source of truth, right? The source of truth now is really Learn and EDX. And so what I love is Microsoft's making it free for everybody. And that means more people that are not in the industry right now are going to be able to get skilled, apply for their first role, get some qualifications, go in and as a grad or a more junior role, but they're going to have the opportunity to get involved quickly and without that blocker to access to training. So I think Learn is a good step in the right direction. It's going to get better and better with time, I expect.
It's funny because you and I have talked, and we both talk with Microsoft a lot about customers and partners. Just being able to get up to speed with what's going on, and just kind of getting their head out of the sand and looking at what's happening around them. But Microsoft's as guilty as any. Between their field being behind, but really around this training content, and it almost. I mean, thank God it's not my responsibility because even even before all this, the training exams that you had to take
Yeah.
for a current competency were for the last version of the product always, which would confuse the hell out of new recruits. They're working on a product like I don't know, they're working on 2013. Oh yeah, the exam you got to go take is for 2011,
Yeah.
which they never. So they've always been kind of a version behind. But now with a pace so much more rapid than it ever was, and so much more content that's required than ever was. Man, I would not want to be the person responsible for keeping that up. But I don't know how you can expect I mean, every partner's not going to freaking events and sitting down live. Every partner's not going to be listening to
Yeah.
us. They have to be able to go to some place and get that information, or how can we ever expect them to get current and be able to do anything?
Yeah.
It feels insurmountable to me. I don't know,
Yeah.
but they have to surmount it. So
I'll have to sort it out at some point, but and I think we'll see that. Like, the last 2 years, I've never been so excited about where, the Microsoft Business Apps ecosystem is going. Whether
yeah,
it's even the stuff in HoloLens, I haven't even spent half the amount of time I want to do in that space because I think it can really come up with some transformative. And when I say transformative, digital transformation can really be applied with some of those tools that Microsoft are bringing out and are squarely putting in the Microsoft business arena rather than kind of, in the gaming arena or, purely for people to build apps that are, if you like, not necessarily business aware.
yeah. I think that I know you've definitely been more excited about the mixed reality and the AI than I had. And I really looked at the whole HoloLens angle around business applications as a solution seeking a problem.
Yeah.
And I think some of the earlier demos that we saw of it in use were kind of solidifying my thinking that, we're trying to figure out something. Yeah, it's really cool technology, but we haven't figured out what the value is
Yeah.
for business. But I think we're starting to see some of that creep in. I think some of that is some of the new stuff they've built around it as a result of that.
Mm-hmm.
The Chevron story that they showed in the keynote, where they've got these oil derricks out in the middle of the ocean, and being able to have some problem on a derrick that requires a specialized expert
Yeah.
to be on site is just not really practical. Them sending them out there on helicopters and jets and spending a fortune to get some expert out there. Not, they got a HoloLens out there, and I mean, a monkey puts it on his head and goes out there and is given directions by that expert.
Yeah.
When you start seeing some of that stuff is when you start really seeing like, okay, a light bulb's starting to go off
Yeah.
now. And I think the light bulb was going off for me, just like it was apparently going off for Microsoft. Is yeah, we need some real world
Mm-hmm.
scenarios, and they've started to find some. Changing a light bulb on a Polaris is not a good. That's not a good use of that technology.
Yeah.
But sending an expert out to an oil derrick, but 1,000 miles out in the ocean, yeah, that's a clear value proposition.
Yeah. So how much technology do you need to change a light bulb? You don't need
You need a
HoloLens, right?
HoloLens. Yeah, you need a HoloLens.
So true,
So
so true. Um, is there anything? Are you doing any of the partner conferences coming up next month? What's that in Vegas?
I am not actually. My wife and I are going to go on a motorhome trip.
Nice.
Uh, First time trying out the motorhome, so we'll see if we can stand each other in that close of proximity 24/7 for a week.
Mm-hmm.
I've got my niece is getting married,
Okay.
uh, so that's the conclusion of that trip. And I was actually glad she picked that time because I don't know about Vegas. I think that they signed a 5-year deal to have it in Las Vegas, which is Las Vegas in July is an oven,
Yeah.
and was out there last year, and I think I'm certainly not to want to discourage anyone else from going. I think that you and I have a little bit of an advantage that as MVPs we already get a lot of that stuff through other means,
Mm-hmm.
so we don't go to conferences to get that information that other people really have to go to conferences to get. So if I were someone who didn't have access to some of the information that we get through the channels we get, and I'd absolutely be out there because you'd have to be.
Yeah.
But given that we get some of that, and it's so freaking hot, yeah, I think I may be taking a pass on that one for until it leaves Vegas. They already called. I think they talked to both of us about going out there and doing some sessions and
Yeah.
stuff, and thankfully I had a real excuse because I got a wedding. I don't know how you're getting out of it.
Yeah. It's I've been to so many of these conferences, and at some point, like, I mean, this is what's happened with me. So my wife, she travels a lot. She got on a flight this morning to Seattle herself from London, and we just decided that we've been traveling so much that July was going to be a no-fly month.
Yeah,
So we're not going anywhere for the month of July, and that's kind of we committed to that a couple of months ago, to really just have a bit of reprieve. I mean, I've found I've become like inherently tired, and I don't know if I came back very jet lagged from Bizet Summit, but I jumped. I was here for a couple of hours, jumped on another flight, went to France for the weekend, and I ended up sleeping most of the weekend in Bordeaux because I was just extremely tired. Whether it was us doing this whole live stream put a lot of pressure I felt on myself. I did in a way, and getting up to speed on it, making it at least half decent. I
no,
didn't want to be a crappy experience, when we've got Microsoft execs on and stuff. So yeah, we're just having a break. So there's my excuse. No fly July. I'm speaking at a user group in man, where am I speaking? It's somewhere in the United Kingdom, but it's a place I've never been to. Um, oh, yeah, can't even think of it. So yeah, I'll go do a session there. So at least I can.
you guys go look for him somewhere in the UK.
I know it's on the 11th. It's on the 11th of July. I know is what it is, a user group session. But and I'm going to talk on the common data model, data models,
Yep.
and CDS, because I still think there's a heck of a lot of confusion for people about what is CDS and what is common data model. And then really separately the both those, what is a data model when building new applications? And really a fourth component of it is what is the data models that Microsoft are providing now through their accelerators?
Yep.
And it's quite exciting what they're doing there, because they're doing a lot of industry research. So, with their automotive one, they're looking at what is the common terms across the automotive industry for understanding data, and then providing a model that everybody, if you like, can speak the same language when we're talking, doesn't matter what company they're from, but if they're in that industry, there's common terminology that's used, and by baking that into into a common data model and making that available means ISVs can build new apps without having to, if you like, reinvent the wheel on the common stuff, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that even goes one step further than that. It's at the first level, it's a little bit of a time saver that you don't have to create these custom entities for your industry because they already kind of exist. So it's a time saver. But then when you think about the next level where that customer has installed 3 or 4 different ISV solutions for different purposes, and today, when that happens, you're typically seeing a similar entity, custom entity for each of those ISVs being added to this customer's tenant that don't necessarily talk to one another. So I think the long-term real benefit of that is if they can get enough ISVs to bite on using those common
Yeah,
entities, then new ISV solutions will just automatically, they'll just all blend. It'll be a much more fluid experience, especially when you think about that AI back end. Because now, when you think about AI being the new king of the hill, dirty data is going to be a problem for the success of AI.
yeah,
Having multiple car entities for the automotive industry is just going to blow up. The AI won't work at all. So they've got to kind of get that normalized for AI to have any values. I think that's another part of that accelerator
yeah.
model is with AI as the long tail, we've got to get people, we got to reduce the number of custom things out there to really be able to have this be more of a push button experience on AI.
Yeah. I tell you what, the more I look into AI, and I've been getting into it because it's one of those areas I want to skill up on this year. Not necessarily from the point of view of I want to create algorithms or anything like that. I'm really looking at it from how does this apply to business? How can businesses use it? And how will it leapfrog certain companies ahead of their competitors? And one of the things that's become really clear to me is the importance of your data quality. When you're training a machine learning algorithm, you can't have dirty data. So, where you've been able to kind of get away with probably data with inconsistencies in it because people are visually looking at it and going, oh, making an allowance. I just don't think that the future of the amount of data volume you're going to need and the quality of that data is going to allow companies to kind of go, oh, well, about it. So I think, and this came out on my call with Heidi from Inside View, is that, they used to be around enriching data. Now they're really a core part of their business is data quality and making sure your data is in pristine condition. So that means, consistent naming conventions for companies, for whether they're incorporated, whether they're LLC, like consistency across it so that as you start to train algorithms and you start implementing machine learning, you're getting quality outputs.
Yeah, it's the Achilles heel of AI. Goog's talked about it in the podcast, about referred to it as the data estate. Said that he actually saw a potential partner opportunity of partners that would develop practices whose sole purpose is to go in and clean up these data estates.
Yeah.
You and I have both seen customers with just piles of shit in their system, and cleaning that up is no fun at all. And as you say, lots of people just come up with workarounds. I'll create a little checkbox
Yeah.
field, and anything with a checkbox is filtered out, or
Yeah.
just workarounds to actually try and maneuver on top of this enormous pile of garbage
Yeah.
to get useful stuff out of it. Because frankly, cleaning it up is a huge burden and a pretty reasonable expense.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, there's 250 connectors out there to bring in more data potentially into your common data
Yeah.
service. So we're simultaneously have a messy pile of data. To get AI, we've got to clean it up. In the meantime, we're continuing to ingest stuff into it. So there's a whole data motion there of getting the data in, but not just shoved in, but having it look on its way and
Yeah.
say, oh, I'm supposed to go here, or I'm already here, or something. And then what's already in there to clean that up. It's frankly shitty work. I mean, it's horrible
Has
work.
to be done.
If you've ever, yeah, it's got to be done. I mean, we get that just for migrations or people moving from spreadsheet-based systems even, and oh, here's a spreadsheet we need imported, and we're looking. Their spreadsheet is riddled with duplicates and irregularities.
Yeah. How many
It's
times on a project the customer goes, how much is it going to cost to import that data? And you're
yeah,
like, well, hang on a
exactly.
second. you know, as in
Yeah,
we can't make
could
that
take
call
anywhere from
without
1 to
looking.
1,000 hours.
Yeah, mate. Just, yeah,
Yeah.
nuts. Well, we're coming up to, 5 minutes to go and close out on the call. This has been, our first live session. For those that are kind of watching the playback, our aim is to be live every Wednesday. If you want to ask us any questions, we're going to monitor the hashtag PowerUpLive. Uh, Steve and I have been talking for months now. Coming up a year. Every week we get on a call and chat and share our kind of views of what we see is happening around Microsoft Biz Apps and around the events and around the technology and what's coming. And we really decided to go, how can we include more people in that? How can we share that information and really use this as an educational time? We're not really here to tell jokes or be humorous or anything like that. We might work in the odd one if we get struck by inspiration. But our goal is to really educate you, the listener, in a format that's kind of we haven't done before. We haven't seen a lot of people doing it in our industry sector. I just noticed, Steve, by the way, yesterday, the opportunity to sign up on LinkedIn for live streaming. So that's
Ah,
a new feature there. Brian Glacier, he had put a post out about it, and so I filled out the form, and so now I'm in the waiting list. It's on a kind of you apply, and then they say if you're in because it's not out for public yet. So whether that's going to
okay.
be a platform that we decide to go to,
Or multiple.
I don't know. That might be one of the things that we decide to do.
Yeah, I think that one of the things I would hope that people could count on from us is we're both fans. I mean, you and I are both fans of Microsoft. That doesn't mean we agree with everything, and I think a lot of people that pay attention to you and I pay attention to us because we don't always agree with everything that Microsoft does. We don't always agree with each other on things, and I think they can expect that you'll kind of be able to tell our mood. You know,
Mm,
coming off Business Application Summit, I'm bullish on Microsoft right now, but there will certainly be times throughout the year where you or I or both of us are going to be at odds with some things that Microsoft is doing, and I think we're going to air that out here,
yeah.
just like we do on our regular calls that we've had without people listening in. Is air out some of our some of our grievances. So
Exactly, exactly. Now, some of you probably wondering why the heck does Steve's screen jump around so much? It zooms in, it zooms out.
we don't know.
This is actually a new feature in Skype called NDI. I think is that the term we looked at or NDS? Can't remember now.
I thought it was called Screw Up Steve's Video.
It's called NDI, which is basically allowing us to hijack the video stream from Steve and me to put it live on air through this process. So I assume there's a few bugs in the software because I have to resize that every now and again. Abdu,
Yeah.
I see you've a comment there. Thanks for giving us some affirmation that we're providing some good content. And so much information you actually didn't say whether it was good or not. Just said you're providing a lot
So
of
much horrible
information. So
information.
yeah, thanks for that. Let us know. Listen, we're really open. This is going to be a fluid show for us. Our hope is that we're going to get a lot more interaction from the audience, as in through the chat window, and that you guys will get value. So if you got questions, you want us to answer them live on here. The biggest thing, when we're doing our test before, Steve, I noticed who the Swede that jumped on the call. What's his
Byron?
who?
Byron?
No, no, no. You're not Gustav, but oh,
Jonas?
who?
Jonas?
Jonas. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, Jonas, if you're hearing this, that I forgot your name, but my memory is in that respect. But he jumped on and said, "Oh, you're allowed to swear on air, are you?" So I actually must have sworn in that test, and I didn't think we're that public. But anyhow, I've removed that. I noticed that you said a word or two there, so I don't know whether we get kicked in the butt from YouTube if we say
Uh,
something like that.
yeah,
Um,
I kind of talk like I write, so I got to maybe clean it up a little bit for this.
well, this is the thing. I don't know. As in, time will tell. We'll get feedback. I mean, if I had CRM Cat on air here, Sarah
Oh,
Critchley, mate, I'd
Yep.
have to develop a bleeper key, I'd say. Um, but I was just had her on my podcast, well, a while back now, and I just noticed on Twitter today people commenting that she never swore once on my podcast, and so
Yeah.
there's obviously that bit that you can switch over and clean up while we're on air. But with that, we've done an hour. We've met our first goal. We'll put this on record later. But with that, thanks everyone. We're going to end the show here. Till next
Sounds
week.
good, man. It was fun. It was fun, Mark. We'll do it again next week.
Okay, ciao, ciao.
Bye.